Tolstoy has aged pretty well into modern times. His philosophy is akin to Stoicism, that the meaning of life is found through grace, love, humility, and kindness to others. He advocated for a simple life and saw that the material overcomplicates and burdens us. This is also similar to a lot of Eastern philosophy like Lao Tzu. While I find his perspective practical, I think it's a little bit dishonest. I'll explain why. Tolstoy observed the lives of simple peasants as he grew older. He himself had a rather privileged life, but he never really felt fulfilled. He was deeply moved by their apparent contentment despite their lack of wealth, education, or social status. But it wasn't that he just saw them as happier. He romanticized their way of life as more pure, morally, more grounded, and closer to what he believed to be true Christian living. That is, humble, patient, self-sacrificing, and spiritually aware through practice rather than intellect. So this reflects the biblical quote of faith without works is dead. Belief isn't enough. It needs to be demonstrated. He also constantly reminds us of the importance of self-expression and art. To summarize his thoughts, among many others, would it be to say something like, the more intelligent a man is, the less he understands why he lives. It's as if he knows the answer but can't feel it. Alright, so far, no problems. But here's where I become suspicious. Was this belief that a humble life bringing a deeper sense of purpose naive? Maybe. Well, yes. See, Tolstoy couldn't just outright say that ignorance is bliss. He had to dress it up a little. And that's fine because it stemmed from the friction in his own life. And I'm not going to make any personal attacks, but we have to point out that every person is essentially tied to their philosophy whether they like it or not. I've said it before, and it's important here. All philosophy is just pain made into a pattern. So what he said was that true happiness was basically found in a few things. Moral clarity, that's living in alignment with God's will through love, simplicity, reverence, and asceticism. True happiness is found in humility and labor. It's through enduring suffering with grace and embracing your role in a universal moral system. It's also found in faith. Now, I already have a problem with conventional faith itself, but here it's to live without any high abstract theology or clerical authority. Like Kierkegaard, he chooses faith over reason. Rationality leads to despair. Faith leads to peace. Tolstoy was all about that anarchy, which is interesting because he's anti-authority, but supremely submissive to God. Actually, it's more than interesting, it's revelatory. It's one of his more quietly ignored contradictions. See, socially, he rejected government, militarism, capitalism, and institutional power. His political leanings tilted toward Christian anarchism. He envisioned a moral society free of coercive force, and personally he hated hierarchy and organized religion. Tolstoy surrenders entirely to a divine moral law. He surrenders to absolution. His God is the embodiment of duty and justice. Basically, he's replacing external tyranny with metaphysical tyranny. I would say this is a natural reflex, though. When someone simultaneously rebels against worldly authority, but submits to absolute internal commandments, it shows that that person has a deep psychological need for order, but doing so in a way that makes it immune from criticism. It's showing the contradiction of rebellion and submission. You want to destroy the master and create another one, as long as it's not exactly human. Basically, you're swapping your political contradictions for spiritual absolutes. You escape one head of the beast just to be consumed by another. So for Tolstoy, it wasn't a contradiction. God's authority was an authority in the worldly sense, but of course it is. It's just shrouded in metaphysics. He disassembled the state and reassembled it inside himself. His philosophy doesn't escape control, it just moves the controller. All answers are evolved coping mechanisms. All pain is the furnace of your reason. And here's the main issue I have. Tolstoy rarely confronted, and I believe that philosophically we must confront this, is the humble person's epistemic volume. Basically, once again, ignorance is bliss. The peasant's happiness is probably contingent on limited awareness. They weren't choosing humility when faced with existentialism. It's that they never fully confronted it. It's pretty obvious that greater minds are more burdened, and the problem is, they can't really pretend otherwise. For example, once you understand how CGI works in a movie, it's not as convincing. Once you understand a magic trick, it's not exciting anymore. Knowledge supersedes sensation. It doesn't matter if you see the illusion. If you know something, this is your reality. You can't unsee it. Now, Tolstoy feared this implicitly. Naturally, he rejected the abyss, but the very fact he needed to write the death of Ivan Ilyich, this is a story about a man who lives the correct outward life, but dies in spiritual horror, this shows that he already knew truth would break simplicity. The problem with his prescription to a happy, fulfilling life is that those searching for purpose, digging through philosophy and screaming into the void, those people have probably already seen past the veil, and returning to ignorance is impossible. The taste of abyssal knowledge can't be forgotten, and the people who generally live simple lives are already doing just that. They don't need this advice. They're already living it. But Tolstoy wasn't stupid. I'm sure this crossed his mind in some way. So why didn't he say this? Why didn't he address this? Well, because he couldn't. To say that the peasants had more joy through limited knowledge, it would ruin the moral superiority he gave them. So Tolstoy doesn't tell us the full story, that happiness is incompatible with full awareness. His idea of fulfillment was moral beauty through ignorance, where I would personally adjust that to endurance. Through beauty, anyway. It just seems more honest. Instead, he had to believe that they knew something better. But to me, it's quite clear. They weren't deeper. They were sheltered. That's it. And some people can't just be sheltered, no matter how much they want to be. But simpler people, or people who don't like to look at the entire picture, and trust me, I grew up around this my entire life. These are the kind of platitudes I often hear. That the search for answers beyond faith, beyond God, is just the pursuit of a darker truth, and not a serious one. That it's just a childish rebellion against the obvious good. The attacks I get when I share my perspective, which is rare, aren't arguments. They're just whether they're socially acceptable or not, like asking, why must you be so negative? Then they try to shame you for simply disagreeing with them with emotional appeals like, oh, it's just so sad that you can't see the beauty and blah, blah, blah. And I find that pretty ironic because I think the opposite is true. It's like someone who grovels to a god will never be able to touch true beauty. Simpler people also praise the banal parts of their life, like it's some kind of divine revelation, where my own interests are criticized for a foolish waste of time. Okay, maybe they're right, but then again, isn't everything a waste of time? And I once had a coworker give me a dumbfounded look when I said, I don't see a reason to believe in God. And he said, well, of course there is. What would be the point if there wasn't? Yeah, so in general, I think it's just lazy reasoning. But see, I don't want to be motivated by fear or blind obligation. These people say things like, I have my family, my job, and my tidy lawn. And what more could I possibly need? This is basically as far ahead as most people want to see, and in a way I'm sort of jealous, because self-reflection is terrifying, but it's more honest. The pursuit of truth, however pessimistic, isn't some kind of immature tantrum. You're not going to give me a condescending hand wave and say, oh, you just need a better perspective. I'm sorry, that doesn't cut it. The abyss isn't just a trick of the light. What happens when you investigate that source of light? But I'll extend an olive branch and just say, I'll contain my negativity around others because even nonstop pessimism gets boring after a while. Boredom really is that bad. Anyway, as far as I'm aware, Tolstoy never explicitly mentions this epistemic point of no return. He doesn't say whether an intelligent person can adopt a simple, humble life. This is just the solution he promotes. But again, here's the other contradiction among others. His tone, his personal despair. This implies he felt haunted by this impossibility. He felt crushed by terror. He couldn't live with his own solution. He says the more he understood the world, the more pointless everything became. He even admits he contemplated self-annihilation when he could no longer find meaning. So, people of Tolstoy's intellect, they don't have the red pill, blue pill option. The blue pill is only found in death, and he died trying to escape it, in a train station, alone, running away from everything he built. And I imagine one possible thought running through his head was, what if this truth can't be undone? What if a simple life is unreachable once the mind breaks the illusion? I think he quietly feared this epistemic point of no return. He was torn between the joy of a simple life and the torment of his own mind. He envied them, but he was caught in his own contradictions. He couldn't fully leap into faith. He didn't fully trust faith, but he also kept on living anyway. And he didn't see the contradictions or the origin of meaning, at least that's my belief. That was his tragedy, though. He longed for a world of clarity when the world is inherently absurd. He admits he often stayed alive out of habit or emotional obligation. So his answer wasn't peace, it was a deflection with morality. But I would agree with him on another point, that the highest trait in an intelligent person is kindness, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you know, it's how people feel. Feelings are the foundational fact of life, even though we see reality through what we seem to know. And that's fine if you're content with the little things in life, but let's not pretend this is a final solution. What I'm saying is, happiness is usually a function from layered ignorance. Happiness, when it does occur in higher minds, isn't naive. It's a kind of hard-won absurdity. It's in sustaining your personal contradictions. Peace isn't found in resolutions. There's no such thing as closure. But honestly, it's a miracle, in my opinion, if you can be at peace with your contradictions. Someone who knows too much to pretend otherwise, who cannot unsee, and tries to create a kind of strange, absurd elegance by how they handle their lives, that's about as much peace as you're ever going to get. So, instead of just bashing another guy's philosophy because it didn't offer any real answers and just ending there, I'll offer a few other things that don't blindly promise true happiness. Instead, maybe just a bit of long-term comfort and peace. First, you need to understand that suffering isn't a glitch. It's the necessary cost of intelligence. The best thing you can do is reach for beauty, and maybe that sounds cliche, and it probably is, but I mean it in a philosophical way. And if you don't understand what I mean by that, I've already made previous videos on it. There's not much to add on that topic for now. But basically, it's about walking the razor's edge. Lean into moments of horror, absurdity, and joy where you feel everything at once and let them pass through you. These are rare moments where you become the contradiction of a moment and it doesn't bother you. And you don't feel the need for more. You can be the joyful pessimist, or the depressed optimist, or the serious clown, whatever suits you. Next, if intelligence is a burden, then learn to shield yourself properly. Allow certain truths to exist, but not dominate constantly. Instead of calling this delusional, it's more about pacing yourself. It's about giving yourself time. It's about breathing. For example, try existential strength training, so to speak. Read unsettling philosophy or engage with harsh truths, and then tone it down after a few days where you just cook, clean around the house, maybe learn a new craft, or force yourself to go explore somewhere you've never been. Try a few new things, but engage in quiet repetition when you need a sense of rhythm. Also, you can try creating your own rituals, and this is why people get down on their knees and pray to God every night, seriously, and why they feel it works, because rituals allow you to embody contradictions without mentally deteriorating. Do something beautiful or absurd every day that you've never done before. Like, imagine talking to a younger version of yourself every morning while you drink your coffee. Write a sad poem in the afternoon and then dance to new music in the evening, something like that. If you're looking to fight doom and gloom, resistance training works too. In order to wrestle with the external, you need to look internally. You could try something interesting to find out who you are and what you can tolerate. So, first, push your limits with consuming information and overabundance in general. Overload your senses as much as you can. Pursue risk. The goal is to immerse yourself in existence as deep as possible. Pedal to the metal. Then pull it all away. Create as much absence as possible. Work with minimalism. Consider it metaphysical detoxing. Ask yourself who you are without all of these things. Without sex, materialism, junk food, or other stimuli. Now, you don't have to do these crazy binges for too long. Don't do anything more extreme than you can handle. You can even do it in micro fluctuations, like listening to loud music and large crowds, then reflecting somewhere quietly without any nuisance. Or, if all that's too much, you can do what I mentioned earlier and embody the contradiction. Be a stoic for a week, and then a romantic. Act like a monk for a few days and then a hedonist. Or someone who seeks answers versus someone who accepts them. You can even create your own identities, like an ego of yourself during moments of stress, and another ego during introspection. Finally, define yourself in that tension. The friction between those two states is who you are. Between absence and excess. Remember, you're aiming for friction, not balance, and if the friction becomes unbearable, that's a sign that your real self is resisting against something too fake. You can journal it or record it with something. Just be sure to reflect on your resonance and your regrets when you experiment. See, most philosophies ask exactly what you are, but I'm asking you to find yourself between signals and silence. I'm asking you to find that pressure when you have too much and too little. And this is who you are. You're not a categorical thing. You're the thing moving between categories. Let me channel my Eastern mysticism with this phrase. To know yourself, become your enemy. Then ask what still remains when both of you are silent. So, what are you when you're filled with surplus? What happens when you remove all of that? What kind of freedom do you have with and without it? Are you nothing more than a creature of habit? How much control of yourself do you actually have? What are you when you have too much and you need nothing? Or when you have nothing and you want everything? Humanity is that very contradiction. We are the thing caught between godhood and obliteration. You want everything because you yearn to belong to something complete. You want nothing because truth hurts too much. It's not a peaceful balance, but it's the truth. And beauty is the only delay to this contradiction. It gives us enough time to hold on without bursting. So, instead of looking for a final conclusion, this is more realistic. There's no finality. If you're still not sure, then I'll ask you to go watch some movies, and you've probably seen most of these. Go watch The Truman Show, The Matrix, Dark City, Annihilation, Solaris, and Stalker. Both of those are by Tarkovsky. Also Synecdoche, New York, which, that movie, by the way, it feels like a horrifying fever dream. That was genuinely the most disturbing film I've ever watched because it felt so real, but so visceral. And I've seen some real fucked up shit, by the way. But put yourself in their scenario and ask what would you do. You'll see that when the illusion breaks, the protagonists often choose to confront the abyss and reframe meaning within it rather than trying to escape it. And yeah, I know these are movies, but it's about the principle when faced with the question of existence. Forget about delight or moral success. You're learning the limits of your agency. What are you allowed to do when everything seems predetermined? That tension is where you find peace. Tolstoy tried to turn his back on the abyss, but the abyss never stopped watching him. Once you notice it, you can't really go back. You just have to find a way to confront it. Alright, well, I think that about does it for this topic. Let me know what you think, and take care of yourselves. Don't overdose, guys. See ya. Bye-bye.